Well, good evening. Good evening. Welcome to this webinar where we hope to explore and explain the further rollout of our tablet program. I'm really grateful to you for joining us, and just introduce the other people in the room with me. I'm joined by Elliot Williams, who leads on digital learning, by Laura Smith, who is assistant head in charge of teaching, learning and innovation, Rob Garvey, who is deputy head academic, and Adam Clark, who takes the lead in the school on IT and communications. I'm the one in the room that knows very little about IT and communications, so I'm going to be handing over to my colleagues for most of the responses. But I did want to place the session in context and explain our commitment to it. So this all arises out of the work that happened during the COVID lockdown, when we moved to online learning and discovered what was possible, and the exciting world of technology and innovation. That led us to the realization that equipping the teachers with Surface Pros meant that they were vastly more skilled in communicating and teaching their work. And from that realization, the thought was that each pupil could benefit similarly by having access to a tablet. That was the thinking process, and that led us to start the process in May, when the fourths all received their tablet and have been working with it ever since. Our intention is that every single exam group, everyone taking a public exam in the school, will be equipped with a tablet. Now, it is slightly different in the sixth form to lower down the school, and we will explore that later on. So we've already had some experience of bringing tablets to pupils and to teachers, and without exaggeration, it's been an enormous success. The staff have really embraced the opportunities, and the pupils are loving the experience of being in the classroom with a tablet and with all that that brings. The work that we're about to do, or about to explain now, will complete the rollout, and everyone will have it who needs one until we start the next phase of GCSE teaching in around about Easter time next year, and then we'll carry on rolling on a year-by-year basis. What we have managed to do is find a great deal for you, a great saving on the equipment and the accessories, as well as providing you with insurance at the school's expense. We have already shared with you on our website details, frequently asked questions, and a video, and I hope that that will have already met any questions or concerns that you might have. But we're here now to respond to any further questioning. A number of people have already sent in questions, and Rob has got them and will be dishing them out around the room. If, as you listen, a further question occurs to you, please don't hesitate to email us on questions@mtsn.org.uk, and that should appear on Rob's screen, and then he can, in real time, share your question, and hopefully we can answer it. We're going to finish as an absolute latest at 7:30, but I'm hopeful that we can canter through this at a good rate, and that we can meet the various questions in a short time. So without further ado, Rob, can I hand over to you?
Absolutely. So probably the best place to start, Laura, is with you. Some questions around, look, this is an expensive project. We're asking parents to fork out quite a lot of money. Why? What's the sort of educational benefit for doing so?
Well, we, as Simon's already outlined, the seed of this was sown during lockdown. But since we've had the trial, or the initial rollout with the fourth form, the response to what we hoped we would see has been absolutely magnificent. We have seen already the capacity for people to collaborate online in real time. We have seen the the massive benefit of having all of our pupils' resources in one place. So rather than lugging around heavy books and calculators and pencil cases, they have everything that they need in one place. In lesson time, pupils can be working on something and the teacher not only sort of reviewing but live marking as they go. So rather than walking around the classroom and in a kind of very slow way, putting the odd mark on one or two pupils' work, that can be done in a much more speedy and efficient way, giving pupils feedback as they're working. In terms of the AI functionality of some of the programs that we're using, particularly in OneNote, the fact that pupils can be doing math sums and then being offered sort of calculations that will help them with whatever particular problems they're facing to really tackle individually what they need to do and what they need to practice is remarkable. And similarly, with our sort of oral and languages, the fact that we can use Teams now to give them oral feedback in a way that a teacher can never get round in a lesson in one hit makes that so much more efficient and so much more kind of effective to give them feedback on how they're speaking during lessons as well. They are able to share things, model answers, for example, we can just distribute. We see somebody doing something brilliantly and just distribute it to every device. Look at this great piece of work. There's no photocopying, there's no time taken to do that. So pupils getting a much better, more efficient learning experience we've already seen. And just the way that they can organise and curate everything that they need and be independent in having all of their own learning resources in one place, we found to be exceptionally helpful.
That was obviously the goal as we set the project up with the current fourth form, and obviously lots of the lower sixth as well. The fourth have had their devices about 6 weeks. The lower sixth have been on the sort of bring your own device program all year. Mm-hmm. Does the hope and the aspiration match the reality from what you've seen so far?
I think it outstrips it, to be honest. I think we were cautious that we were going to have enough use. We wanted to make sure that teachers were going to be able to make enough use of the devices while still maintaining a balance of, some off-screen lessons as well. And I think we've absolutely hit that balance well. In the learning walks that you and I have done around the school during the school day, we're seeing boys using their styluses, boys using their devices in a nice balance. The feedback from the boys and from staff has been exceptionally positive. So yeah, I think beyond our expectation, yeah.
Brilliant. There's lots of questions about technical sort of tech spec, and also quite a few questions about exceptions. So it might make sense to start with the sort of the devices that we are proposing. There are a few exceptions that we can pick up, but Adam, you're probably best placed to speak to that. So we've explained in the letter that there are 2 devices that parents can choose between that the school is able to purchase on their behalf. Do you want to say a word about those?
Yeah, well, the current fourth form are using the two main devices. I suppose the main recommendation is the Microsoft Surface Go 3 that uses a Core i3 processor. It's got adequate RAM, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and a hard disk of 128 gigabytes storage. Actually, as part of the previous webinar we gave, it was the parents who raised the prospect of something a little bit more powerful. And because that's really from the same stable as the Surface Go 3, we were very happy to listen and to adopt that. That alternative device is the Microsoft Surface Pro 8. It's a slightly larger device, both physically. It uses an i5 processor, more RAM, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and 256 gigabytes of storage. So there are these two competing devices, and I think if parents felt that the Surface Pro 8 were the more suitable device based on their son's interest, I think exactly as we had in the previous iteration of this, what we would ask that the Surface Pro 8 was bought outright immediately, but we would be in a position to offer sort of stage payments for the Surface Go 3.
Great, thank you. And a couple of parents have said, look, I've gone to Amazon or John Lewis, and I seem to be able to find a Surface Pro advertised for less than was in the letter. Can you explain why that might be?
Well, the market is very complicated because it's very easy to find devices with different amounts of RAM, different amounts of hard disk storage, different types of processor. So it's possible to secure almost any price that you're hoping to find in one sense. Actually, when one starts to make a sort of a like-for-like comparison, the prices that have been shared with us are a little bit higher than what we've managed to secure. But in addition, the prices also reflect the fact that you're not simply getting a tablet, just a tablet on its own. What the boys would also need would be a keyboard case. And actually, Amazon, in a sort of slightly cunning fashion, have reduced the price of the device but increased the price of the keyboard case. There would also be a need for a stylus. Well, what we're able to offer to parents is substantially cheaper than what's on Amazon. And also, we are talking really about students who are a little bit rough and ready sometimes. So that we would also very strongly recommend that there would be a shock-resistant case if the device were actually fall onto the floor or something like that, a neoprene case so that the device was waterproofed, and a screen protector if there were to be some particular impact. The other thing that we would view as very, very important would be antivirus software. And all of these have a particular cost, but again, we certainly tend to reconfirm the prices before we go back to parents. We've done the absolute best by rolling out a program of competitive tender, and the price really is about as low as it possibly can be.
Can I jump in there, because I think it's a really important point? You're getting all of the accessories as part of the package and the protection software, but in addition, you're getting insurance that will mean that if there were to be an accident, then your son is not inconvenienced. And that insurance is provided by the school for you. And we're also able to negotiate very keen prices because we're buying in bulk. So you will not find a better package elsewhere.
Great. I'll have a go at the next one, which is a sort of question about why we've gone for Surface devices and not iPads, and what the deal is with the sixth form. So we've got a sort of variety of questions that are picking up the same idea. Why are we suggesting at least a Surface Pro 7 if somebody's got their own device? Can parents buy their own devices, not via the school? The short answer to that is yes, of course you can. I think we've been able to negotiate a really good quality device that we think is going to last throughout the rest of your son's time at the school at the very least. And at a discount with the things the headmasters said included. So we think that is a good device. But if you want to independently buy a Surface device, that's absolutely fine. Obviously, that's going to be on your insurance. You're going to need to get the kind of protection and so on that we've mentioned. And at that point, we would want you to bring the device into school so that we can just check it over and make sure that it's going to meet the sort of requirements of how we're using it within school. And there is a slight distinction to be drawn here between the current divisions and the current fifth form. So we're talking about rolling out these devices to boys right at the start of next term, probably on the first day of the autumn term. And so really we're talking about fifth formers, next year's fifth form, and next year's sixth form. And next year's sixth form are therefore going into the current scheme we have, which is a bring your own device scheme in the sixth form. Now, what that means simply is that pupils are very welcome to bring a device into school. It needs to be a stylus-operated inkable device. That's essential because the boys are going to be taking handwritten exams. Obviously, if they've got access arrangements, those access arrangements continue. But for the overwhelming majority of boys, they're going to be writing by hand. And so they need to have as their normal way of working, operating with a stylus. And actually, we've seen huge numbers of benefits in doing that. So if current fifth formers going into the sixth form want to bring a device which is an iPad that you already have, or a device that isn't a Windows device, the sixth form are in a slightly different position. As with so many things, they've got a different uniform. The sixth form will be having free periods, different ways in which they have a common room. So we do treat the sixth form slightly differently. And they are starting to get ready for university and the independence that goes with that. They also have, therefore, slightly less of the monitoring software that applies to the boys in the middle school, because, frankly, we trust the sixth form a bit more. They're a bit more mature, and that's sort of part of the package. So if you already have an iPad, and you want to bring that in with a stylus, then there's no problem doing that. Our experience has been that the Windows devices are better than iPads, is the long and the short of it. Lots of us during the lockdown were operating on both devices actually, and because we use the Office 365 suite, because we are using OneNote, because we're using Teams, all of these Microsoft products, the Windows devices we have found are set up to, they just have greater functionality. There are fewer problems for those we found who are using these devices. So, and that's been true this year when we've had lower sixth formers in the current lower sixth trying that out. So if you've already got a device and you're going into the sixth form next year, fine, you can bring that in and it will probably be fine. If you're looking to buy a device, our recommendation is that buying a Windows device is best, because that's the way the software is written. And that's why with the current divisions, as they become fifth formers, we are saying, you guys, we really do need you to buy into our scheme. With 3 years more at the school, we think that that's much more important that you're doing that. Sixth form, slightly shorter period of time, and it's possibly a bit more survivable. The boys have got fewer subjects, and maybe need to make slightly less use of the device. They've got more free periods and so on. Whereas the current divisions are going to be using the device really in the overwhelming majority of their lessons. And we want to be able to support them as best we can over the next 3 years of their education. And that's why we are making that differentiation and saying, yes, for the divisions as they come fifth formers, they should be on a Windows device. So they're happy to sort of clarify any questions on that if you want to drop me a note, but I think that's the key distinction we're making at this stage. We're not saying iPads don't work, and if you're coming into the sixth form and you want to use an iPad, that's fine, but our experience has been they haven't been quite as good, and therefore it's worth, that's a conversation to have at home. Is there a spare iPad, in which case that's what you want to do, or is this the moment you want to invest in a device that your son's going to carry all the way through into university and beyond, and think about it as a sort of 5-year purchase? It might be that's the way to go. Elias, I mentioned something about monitoring. It might be quite helpful to bring you in here at this stage. We've got some monitoring software that the boys are going to have on their devices, and maybe you could just explain a bit about how that works, what it does to the device, how the boys can use the devices at home, and so on.
Okay, so between the hours of 8 and 4, the devices are monitored at a much greater level than effectively what will happen when they connect at home. So in school, between 8 and 4, well, actually on a school day, between 8 and 4, the device can be seen by the school in terms of the content of the screen, and the content of the screen is automatically monitored by our software. So text written on the screen, pictures that appear on the screen, etc., are all automatically analysed for harmful content, nasty messages to friends, etc. Teachers will also be able to see exactly what's being done in their classroom. So if a boy's off task, they'll be able to move them back on task, and also use that to see the screen and give students help as and when they need it. Outside of the school, students will be connecting through your own internet, and so therefore they won't be protected by any filtering that we have in school. And also they will not be monitored in terms of what's on their screens at all. The only thing that will be monitored outside of school is when they connect to our existing school systems and use chat messages and email, because there is some existing server-side monitoring that will look at effectively, again, keywords used when they're communicating with other students, looking out for effectively causes of concern, bullying, etc.
Great, thank you. Elliot, while we've got you, secondary questions. So Adam's talked about these 2 different devices that are available. If pupils are doing a sort of resource-heavy, things like a CAD, they're using these sort of very resource-heavy applications, is the recommendation that they need to go for the Surface Pro 8 at that point, or is the Go 3 still sufficient?
So in the subject areas that use, effectively need high-performance computing, existing school computer rooms will still exist, and students will have access to that in their lessons. And so, in a computing lesson, it'll be quite often students will be using their Surface Pro, their Surface Go alongside the computer in front of them. There would be some additional benefit in terms of work outside of school, that they would be able to run the same software that they might have on the school computer on their Surface Pro, that they might not be able to get working to the same level on Surface Go. but it's not essential in any way.
Okay, thank you. Laura, writing with a stylus against writing with a pen. We've said already that exams are going to be done with a pen, unless somebody's got an access arrangement. That will carry on as before. And we're not saying to those who have an access arrangement they have to also buy an inkable device alongside that, are we?
Yep.
What about what's the experience so far with handwriting? Are boys going to still have a chance just to be writing pen on paper at any point, and how does that work?
So in the majority of lessons, boys are using their stylus on the screen, but occasionally we want to make sure that they're still writing on paper, so they've still got that practice. And some boys just prefer writing on paper, which is absolutely fine. They're able to write with pen on paper, and then they just take a picture with their device and upload it to their OneNote. So they can still write with pen and paper to maintain their usual way of working, but quite a few of them, well, the majority I would say, are getting on very well with their stylus, which replicates the writing that we normally have with pen and paper. So yeah, it's a flexible arrangement for whatever.
And is it fair to say most of the tests that boys have been doing have been done on pen and paper?
Most tests are on pen and paper because that's the way that they will be ultimately examined. So yeah, we're going to maintain testing on pen and paper. Yeah.
Great. Headmaster, these are expensive devices, and isn't there a real danger of theft? Aren't we, boys walking to the station in the winter, we're just putting an extra £800 worth of device in their hands. Help.
Well, it is true that the boys now are carrying equipment that is attractive to thieves. That they're already doing so with their iPhones or with the AirPods or a variety of other electronic equipment. And we do work with the boys to ensure that they present as low a profile as possible to potential thieves. So we give advice on how to move through the tube system and through London without drawing attention to how you're having any particularly expensive equipment. So I don't think there would be at any greater risk. And our experience is that we haven't had any instances of theft so far, and the boys don't seem to be acting in ways that draws the attention of thieves. So I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't be cautious. Of course we should. But I don't believe that this initiative represents any greater danger.
Great, thank you. Adam, a couple of technical questions. So if a parent buys the device outright themselves or supplies the device outright themselves, when would the people be bringing that into school to be sort of looked at and make sure that the software is all there?
Right, yes. So that would be something that we would ask the students in that situation to bring their device at the start of the academic year. We could verify, hopefully, that it was fit and ready to go quite quickly, but we wouldn't need it any sooner than before September.
Great. Are we collaborating with any software companies and sharing or selling the data we're using?
No.
Good, that's an easy one. Insurance. If a parent buys the device, again, separately from school, can the school nevertheless insure it?
Sorry, say that last one.
So if a parent buys the device outside of school themselves, not through our scheme, can they nevertheless buy insurance or get insurance from us for the device?
Theoretically, that's a possibility, but if there were a need to draw on the insurance, it might just simply be easier just to have the device insured within a sort of a home insurance policy, and that would probably hopefully lead to a desirable conclusion that bit quicker than going via the school and back. So I think probably the best one is to make individual arrangements at home.
Fine, thank you.
The point of us providing you with insurance is to give you an incentive to go through us to get the equipment so that we have the greatest commonality across the pupils. So I would suggest that if you want insurance through the school, then the best thing to do would be to purchase the device through the school.
Thank you. Elliot, can Can you say a little bit of a word about the software store on the devices? What can pupils, what sort of apps can the pupils download? And a parent here saying specifically, can we as parents put monitoring software on the device as well, Microsoft Family, that sort of thing?
Because effectively they'll be running a professional edition of Windows, I don't think family settings at the device level will be possible. Students will have full access to the Windows store so that they can install whatever software effectively they need for their lessons. But obviously, any restrictions you put on your home network in terms of router settings, things like that, will still work at home.
Okay, great. Probably the next set of questions then is the sort of what next questions. So some parents, it sounds like, may want to, they've already got a device perhaps, and they want to just have that checked out by us, but broadly very happy with that. Some of the sixth formers may choose to bring their own device in, with the caveat that we know that the Apple operating system is okay, but maybe not quite as extensive as the Windows one. If a parent wants to buy the device through the school, there are a couple of ways to do that. So Adam, can you just sort of talk us through next steps?
Yeah, so what we will do beginning as soon as possible, we will go back to our suppliers, invite them to tender for these devices in order that we can refine the costs that we presented. In our earlier correspondence, we presented sort of indicative costs, but actually now we have to do better just to reconfirm what we say. Then we will send out in the next few days, hopefully, an order form. And in essence, there are 4 options: either purchasing the Surface 8 outright in a single payment, electing for the Surface Go 3, and it would help the school if parents were able to pay for that in a single payment, and that was offered to the 4th form earlier in the year. The third option is the Surface Go 3 over 6 staged payments, and the final possibility would be the situation where a parent elects to provide their own device, and it would be very helpful for us to know about that as well.
There is also the option of asking for a bursary consideration.
Yes, I was going to pick that up, Headmaster. Do you want to say a word about that? Because obviously, we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. It's in some ways not the ideal time to be making an extra purchase.
We get that. And we also know that there are pupils who are receiving a current bursary or families that are finding the current cost of living crisis difficult. So if that is applicable to your family, then please contact the school and we will look to find ways to be supportive.
Thank you. And Adam, just to come back to you then, what sort of timescales are we talking on here? One parent saying, is there any chance I better get hold of this before the end of term?
It's fairly unlikely that we'll have all the information that we need in order to comply with that understandable request. Perhaps an alternative way of looking at it, if the students don't get their devices until September, then they no chance of damaging them over the summer holiday. So perhaps sort of playing safe might be best in this case.
And when the pupils do get their devices, we'll make sure that they're trained up on them.
Elliot, I don't know if this is one for you. Does the software suite provide device tracking? I know lots of those of us who've got iPhones are used to the idea you can sort of monitor where your devices are. Is that something that can be done with these?
Yeah, it is one of the settings in Windows Professional. It's one of the ones we have told the boys to turn on in the initial configuration state. They can turn that off later on themselves, but we would recommend that they have that on at all times.
Thank you. And of course, if you're somebody whose family's on the Apple network, you can always buy one of those Apple tags, can't you? Which then effectively tracks the tag attached to the device. So that's a sort of shortcut that people can do as well. A couple of people have asked, what about Surface Pro 6? If I can get one on eBay for less than this, which is certainly true. Why does it need to be a Model 7 or Model 8 Surface Pro?
Well, we've chosen devices which are as modern as they possibly can be, really with an idea of future-proofing. I hope the device is going to last 3 or 4 years. I suppose the other way of looking at it, go for a device that might have been, in the case of the Surface Pro 6, been effectively retired in 2019. If something were to go wrong, it'd be very, very difficult to get it repaired, and you'd be forced into buying a new device. The other thing I think we would be a bit concerned about, that if any given household were to go for a slightly older device, it might not run quite so quickly within the school environment, and that could prove to be very frustrating for all parties.
Great. I think we're just about there with the questions that have come in so far. I'll give people just a moment if anything else wants to jump up. I'm just looking, Elliot has got a copy of both of the devices in front of him. It might be worth sort of doing a happy shopper moment now to sort of give people a sense of what they look like, and also the comparative sizes, because I know some people have asked about that.
Yeah, in terms of sizes, this is the Surface Go 3. It's about the same size as kind of an A5 notepad, maybe slightly bigger. The Surface Go 8 is not quite twice as big. So in terms of, effectively, if thinking about extra screen size, etc., you can see there's not actually a huge amount of difference there between them in terms of that, but you do get, a slightly bigger screen and larger performance from the Surface Pro 8.
Great, thank you. I think, Headmaster, that's about it.
Well, thank you very much. I hope that helped. I'm keen that we offer to all pupils taking public exams the advantages that we've already seen the fourths benefiting from. It seems to me to be an opportunity to take the school into the 21st century and to really exploit the exceptional advantages associated with this technology. And also, this is a skill that the pupils are going to need at university and in the world of work, and we'll be equipping them to function effectively with the kind of equipment that they'll be taking for granted in the future. So I hope you'll happily join us on that journey, and I hope that you've had all of your questions answered. If not, there are perhaps one or two that we'll come back to individually and speak to you directly. But if you have any further thoughts, then don't hesitate to email in on questions@ntsn.org.uk, and we can pick those up as we go along. But otherwise, I'll say thank you very much, and I hope that was useful.